This episode is sponsored by the Spring Forward Writers Retreat. If you're someone who has a book as your luxury item and you've been sitting on it for a while, I've got just the answer for you. If you need somebody to hold your hand or help you do it as a work session in person, the Spring Forward Writers Retreat is happening March 14th to 16th of 2025. It's happening in beautiful Kissimmee, Florida. So if you're interested in that, if that's something you want to do, you want to knock out your book at the beginning of 2025, let's go. Because when you come, you're coming with your book as is. Whether that's with the outline, maybe just a few ideas that you put on paper, maybe you're coming starting from scratch. By the end of the weekend, you will leave with a rough draft. You will leave with a manuscript completed. So that is the tangible item you're coming away with, okay? So if you're interested, go to tinyurl.com/spring forward retreat. Good evening. Happy Wednesday, my winners and goal getters. Welcome to another episode of the Getting the Win Show. I am your host, Melissa T, the Procrastination Bully. If this is your first time checking us out, welcome. In today's episode, I'm tackling procrastination in creativity. Because for all of the different episodes that we've done tackling productivity and beating procrastination, it probably seems like I kind of vilified it, right? I am its bully. However, there is one context in which procrastination can be helpful. This is the only one I know of, though, and that's creativity. I'm going to talk about an example of what procrastination and creativity looks like when it works properly, but then also get into the counter strategy for if you are somebody that is a creative and you're procrastinating on your luxury item, whatever that creative project is. If that's your luxury item, how to break through that procrastination and move forward to start moving the needle and getting that thing done. Okay. So first, let me give you two distinctions very quickly, because with procrastination, we already know at the core, it is simply delaying something. Procrastination is simply delay. If you watched the anniversary episode, Ray Jones, who's my very first interview guest, he's a life coach, and that was one of the things he said. Like, procrastination is simply delaying something. But here's the differentiator. With procrastination, you're delaying using something that does not serve you. It's a zero-sum game when you're procrastinating. In the context of creativity, the reason it can work, the reason it can be effective, is if you're using strategy. Strategy is deciding to delay for the purpose of timing yourself for an advantage. So there are some things, whether in the business world, in the creative world, whatever the concept you want to include there or context, where watching something carefully and timing it properly can give you a better advantage as opposed to just barreling through and getting it done right away, right? There are some things that timing is needed for. And so in the realm of creativity, that is one of those contexts in which it works. So here's the difference again, just to recap. Strategy is when you decide to delay based on timing to gain an advantage. That's strategy, and that's fine. That's when delay is good. Procrastination, on the other hand, is a zero-sum game because you're delaying in a way that doesn't serve you at all. You're simply choosing distraction when you could be moving the needle over here. Okay? So be honest with yourself. If you're someone who is a creative and you have a project that you've been sitting on, that is your luxury item, be honest with yourself. Like, is this a timing thing? Is this a strategy thing? Or am I just delaying to procrastinate? Like, am I just procrastinating? So if your answer is yes to number two, like you're procrastinating, like you're being honest with yourself, you're like, you know what, Melissa, unfortunately, that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm procrastinating. I'm choosing the distraction. Here's the counter strategy for that. in that context of creativity, if you're procrastinating on a project, okay, the first thing, this involves 2 steps. The very first thing I need you to do is ask yourself the question, is this luxury item something I actually want? Is that thing what you really want? Or did a someone or situation influence you to take it on as your own? Did a someone or a situation influence you to claim it as your own? So think about it and be honest. That book, that album, that fashion project, if you're into fashion and textiles, the upgrade on the car, the video, the social media content, the speech, whatever that creative venture is, the painting, the sculpture, whatever the creative venture is, if that's what you're sitting on, ask yourself that. Even for something that's a little less sexy, quote unquote. If you're a copywriter and that there's something there's a copywriting project that you've committed yourself to, ask yourself that question. Now, I'm not talking about clients in this particular video, y'all. Like, this is your specific commitments that you've made to yourself. Is this something you actually want for real, for real? Or did a someone or a circumstance influence you to claim it as your own? If it's the latter, you can choose to let it go. If you're sitting on this thing and it turns out that it's really not something you want to do for real, don't hang on to it. That may be a hot take, that might be controversial. There are some who say, hey, if you say you're going to do something, then do it. But there are times in life when you do have to be honest with yourself about what you've committed yourself to. Because if there's something that's not serving you, especially in this context where it's a personal project, not something you're doing for any clients or anybody external. If it's something that you committed to for yourself, but you find out you don't feel like doing it, it would be more expedient for you to cut that out, to open up your time so you can work on the things that are indeed a high priority for you, that matter to you, that will feed into your fire and push you forward to get it done. Okay? So that's step 1 in that process, that counter strategy. Is this something you want for real? Or did a someone or circumstance influence you to claim it as your own? If it's the latter, gracefully let it go. Free up your schedule so you can do something that's more meaningful to you. Because without a powerful enough why, you're going to drop it again, or you're going to continue to sit on it. Can we be real about that? Can we be honest? That's what's going to happen. Okay? And then number 2 is a series of questions I'm going to present to you. These are almost your procrastination FAQs, if you so choose to use these. Okay? But when it comes to procrastinating on that creative project, find out why. Ask yourself why you're sitting on it. Is it because you have a fear of failure or success? If that's the case, then ask yourself, okay, what basis is there for that fear? Is there any scientific proof to back up this belief? If there is, then you have grounds to revisit your decision to commit to it. If not, though, then what you have, my friend, is an irrational belief, and you can chuck it. Continue to move forward on that luxury item. If there's no scientific proof for you to stop or to sit on it or to fear failure or even fear the success of it, it's an irrational belief and you can let it go. So that's question number 1. That's indicator number 1. Do you have a fear of failure or fear of success as it relates to that thing? If it's an irrational belief, keep going. Don't give it up. Keep going. or start it back up since you've been sitting on it, right? Start it back up. The next question on the list or the next fear to address. Do you feel like you're an imposter as it relates to this thing? Maybe that's why you're sitting on it. You feel like, who am I to talk about this? Who am I to create this? Who am I to present this? You're you. If you're asking that question, then here's the counter question for that question, which is, are you being real about what you're doing? I believe I quoted this before. I want to say this was from E.T. and the brothers from the Secret to Success podcast. But the only reason somebody would be dealing with imposter syndrome is if they're actually an imposter. I want to say E.T. himself said that. Like, are you an actual imposter, or do you mean what you say? Are you genuine with what you're presenting? Are you doing this from your expertise and your history, your experience, your research, your earnest effort? If it's real, then by all means, keep going. If you're being honest with yourself and you are indeed an imposter, stop. Immediately. Stop. Don't do it anymore. Because the unfortunate truth for us as human beings is that we leak. We cannot help it. If we're not genuine about what it is we're doing, it will leak through in the way we approach the thing. So if you're a note taker, write this down. Don't worry, it's coming across the screen, so you'll be able to pause it and write it down. How you view a thing determines how you do the thing, which impacts the fruit of the thing. Okay? I'm going to run it back. I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. How you view a thing determines how you do the thing, which impacts the fruit of the thing. Okay? So if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, just ask yourself that question. Am I being real? Are all of my efforts real? Is all of my research real? Or am I just doing this because it's trending or because somebody told me to do it? Somebody told me it would be a great idea. If it's this one, don't do it. Like, kill it. Because the last thing you want to do is put it out and people sense the fakeness, because we will detect it. We as human beings are pretty good lie detectors. It will either leak through in the look on your face, the look in your eye, the tone of your voice, your body language, the way that you sit, the way that you stand, depending on what you're doing, the level of quality in the work, if it's not having to do with verbal communication. If it's maybe a work of art, maybe the quality of the work may be lessened if you're doing something for fake or for a contrived result as opposed to through your passion or through genuine effort. So yeah, make sure you ask yourself those questions. So that's that one. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome, those are the questions for that. Okay. Now, if you're somebody that perhaps part of your luxury item, part of the creative thing that you need to do requires repetition. Maybe you don't like doing that. Maybe you can't be bothered. Or say, for instance, this particular luxury item requires for you to market it, which that's the case for most things, right? And maybe you're someone who struggles with the idea of having to repeat your message over and over again. Let me share with you what I've learned, because I can tell you firsthand that's something I don't like doing. I don't like repetition too much. However, one of the lessons I've learned is that, especially as it relates to marketing, repetition is required. It's required. People are just busy. They will forget. They will forget. Pay attention to all of the different advertisements that we're bombarded with, right? There are certain brands that we'll always remember because we always see them. Repetition is required if you're marketing something, if you're selling anything. Repetition is required. People get busy, they forget. If you only make the impression once or twice, they'll forget it. And, quite frankly, the more consistent you are, the greater the trust that is actually built up in the minds of your target audience. Statistics show that I want to say it's 11 different touch points at which point a person starts to trust you and starts to take you seriously. No less than 11 touch points. So, one social media platform, another, perhaps something in person, like a workshop or a talk, press release, something that you do in the media, whatever the case may be, whichever different forms you choose to use, or just a set social media schedule on one platform. Case in point, this show. Folks who rock with this, they know Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, they can expect an episode. Consistency. Another case in point, the S2S podcast, Secret to Success podcast. Dr. Eric Thomas, CJ Quinney, Jamal King, Carl Phillips. Those guys have never missed a single week. Even if they're not present, what they'll do is just do a rerun. They've dropped a couple reruns. It's rare, but they've done it. We've never had a Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern where we didn't have an episode. Consistency. People learn to trust you when you continue to show up. Nikki Saunders, who is one of the top minds as it relates to social media marketing and branding, she mentioned recently in a thread, I want to say, she posted a thread that said, it's not build it and they will come. It's continue to show up and they'll stick around. I love that distinction. It's not build it and they will come, but instead continue to show up and they'll stick around. So if you're someone that doesn't like repetition, maybe you're procrastinating on the thing because you don't feel like having to repeat yourself again. You don't feel like having to talk about this again. Repetition is required. Repetition is required. Consistency is repetition. Discipline is repetition. Practice makes expertise. Practice makes permanent. So if that's the reason why you're sitting on it, get it done, my friend. Get it done. Okay? This is the procrastination bully bullying the procrastination in you, if that's the reason why. Don't let that be the reason why you're stopping. Okay? So the next one is if you're feeling ill prepared. This is slightly related to the imposter syndrome situation. If you're feeling ill prepared for something, and if that's the reason why you're deciding not to start on it, or the reason why you put it on pause, then the simple solution for that is prepare. Prepare. If it's a situation where you don't have enough information, by all means, get it. Carve out the time to do that research to figure out what you need to figure out. Or if it's not a what, maybe it's not enough, maybe it's not an information thing for you. Maybe you need a who. So in that case, find your who. Take the time to find your who. That way you can get it done. Move that needle that much faster. Get that much closer to the finish line. Preparation is a cheat code anyway. The separation is in the preparation, right? How many times have we heard that? The separation is in the preparation. So if that's the reason why you're saying you don't feel like doing something, by all means, dive into that research. But here's where I would tell you to stop, though. Here's where you have to draw the line with the research if you're somebody that is prone to research a thing to death. Air traffic controllers, I'm talking to y'all right now. Grounds crew too. If you're someone that loves to research, you get lost in the wash of knowledge, give yourself 48 hours. Give yourself 2 days worth of research on the thing. You will have amassed enough information, especially if it's a creative project that you've committed yourself to. Give yourself 48 hours and start or pick it back up. Once you're in the motion, then you'll likely come across some more things you need to learn about, in which case, by all means, learn a little bit more. Do some research as you come up on things that you need. But what I'm sharing with you in this episode is enough to get you started or restarted. Okay? I want to make sure we move the needle in your life. So here's an example of when procrastination works, and it is a combination of another caveat for procrastinating in a way that's advantageous for your creative project. If you're working with people and you're delaying what you're doing because of the people you're dealing with, there is a valid cause for pause there. Don't wait too long on that though. My counterpoint with that is observe and then make a decision. Observe and then make a decision. So here's the example. Marie Forleo, who is a phenomenal life coach. She's a Webby Award winner for her series Marie TV and podcast. It's a series and a podcast. But she recently shared a story in which she and her team had been working on a contract with a client, and it would have been a pretty substantial payout, this contract. But she found herself and her team just they kept kicking the can down the road. And even she's someone who's a pilot flight attendant. So she moves really fast. She's highly passionate, multi-passionate at that, and full of energy. So even she was questioning herself, like, why are we still not moving forward with this? And as it turns out, they eventually discovered that the client that they were planning to work with and finalize the contract with essentially had a conniption in a conversation in which they were discussing the project and discussing the contract. The client lost their cool and were expressing some terms that were not going to be a good fit for Marie and her team. So ultimately, it worked out that they didn't go forward with the client. So if you're procrastinating because you're concerned about the people that you're dealing with, then observe, frankly and honestly. And then again, go back to the question I was asking you earlier about irrational beliefs. If it's a person or persons that you're having doubts about working with, is there anything to back that up? Is there anything concrete to back up your concerns? Observe that. Talk to the people connected to them. Get a feel for how they operate. If there is a valid basis for not moving forward, then express your boundary and not move forward. Make sure they understand why, but express your boundary and not move forward. Because that's a valid reason. Okay? Follow your gut. Listen to your gut. Okay? So I wanted to touch on this procrastination creativity because I know that's something that a lot of creatives do deal with on a very regular basis. Entrepreneurs deal with it on a very regular basis. There is a time when procrastination or delay is advantageous, and that's strategy. When you're researching and observing and noticing a specific timing for something, and you're delaying to wait for the timing to be correct. This is very contextual in terms of marketing. Folks in marketing or sales, they'll know what I mean. You'll know what I mean. But outside of that, the other example would be when you're dealing with people, and I just shared the steps on how to resolve that. Observe, ask questions, and if it's not a fit, cut the cord. Make the decision to cut the cord. In every other instance, whether that's fear of success, fear of failure, imposter syndrome, or that lack of desire for repetition, make sure you're not waiting based on irrational beliefs. Because if they are irrational beliefs, keep moving forward. If you need a who to help you move forward faster, get the who that you need. but move the needle and keep going. Okay. Hopefully this information has helped you. Want to make sure we are moving the needle in your life because we are goal-getters out here. And what you have set out for yourself is a luxury item. And remember to start with that first question, which is this goal, is this luxury item what I want for real? Or did a someone or a circumstance influence me to claim it as my own? If it's the latter, cut it. Cut it. That way, that frees up your time to do the things that matter most to you. Whether that's work related or other passion projects or ideas you might have. If you have any questions, be sure to hit me up. You can follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and Threads at Getting the Win Show. So feel free to follow me there and DM me. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe at Getting the Win and drop your questions in the comments below. Let me know which of these tips, these questions resonated most with you and the one you're going to apply in your life going forward. In the meantime, have a great rest of your Wednesday and a great rest of your week. Peace.